what it is, what it was, and what it shall be. It's another episode of the Big Tyme Sports Show. I'm Reggie Flood, and of course, we're live here on HBCU Sports, giving to you what you need, what you want, sometimes a little bit of both. So we're gonna try to get it in. We got a few people waiting on a few people to come in. We're just going live, gonna have a good time. We're gonna have some discussions. We're gonna talk about DEI and its effect on HBCUs. And is this a moment for the HBCU community to circle the wagons? And could this be a moment for HBCUs to flourish? That's the topic. That's what we're going to talk about. We also probably get into it a little bit about Jackson State and their women's basketball team. They've been so dominant throughout the SWAC. Do they deserve more than a 16 seed? Do they deserve a bid even if they don't win the conference tournament? There's been a lot of debate and consternation about that. So we're going to get into that a little bit. But I really want to let everything get full, let everybody get in here so we can make this thing happen and have a little chat and see what's going on, see how you guys feel about DEI. Emmett Smith made some comments. I think Emmett Smith took a strong stand, and I was really encouraged by that. Emmett taking his stand about DEI situation at the University of Florida. If you guys hadn't seen it, I'm going to give you a preview of what Emmett Smith had to say. He was definitely, as he said, totally disgruntled by what he had seen in the University of Florida. If you don't mind, comment, go to the Facebook. Go to the YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe as you're watching, as you join us. This is going to be part of it. We need to get this audience up, get you guys involved. If you're on Facebook, watch us on Facebook, like on Facebook, share it with your friends, and then go to YouTube also and like and subscribe. We want you to do both. But yeah, that's all a part of it. Love you guys being in. What's going on, Willie? Glad you could join me, brother. Appreciate it. Anybody else that's out there, tell me what's happening. Let me know you're here. Really appreciate you guys joining in. Yeah, I think DEI, and I want to get you guys' opinion on this. Been a lot of discussion about diversity and equity among the universities. A lot of universities have taken a step now to get rid of the diversity and equity part of their universities. They've gotten rid of all of the full programs. They've fired people. They've let people go. They've dismantled the programs, changed the names all across the country. We've seen that. And what I call is something I call the Confederate schools in the Confederate conferences. That's if people who are familiar with me know that I've on the regular have called those schools the Confederate schools and the Confederate conferences, because in particular in the SEC and ACC, if you look at the history of those schools, a lot of them have direct history concerning the Confederacy. LSU, the old war school, Ole Miss directly, so it's not surprising the actions that they're taking, but they seemed to have made progress over the last 30 years in diversity and equity. And they seem to want to erase that. There seems to be a move there where there has been a concerted attack on DEI across the country, on affirmative action, DEI. They have made DEI into the bad guy. Like all of a sudden, if these people who are being trained, who are educated, all of a sudden can't do the job because their race or gender was considered in them getting the opportunity to even interview for the job. That, first of all, you have to be qualified to even get in for DEI to even be considered. And that's one of the things that the people who have campaigned and made DEI the villain, that's one misnomer that they've been able to put out there, that all of a sudden DEI opens up a bunch of unqualified people for jobs and things like that, which is just not the truth. The first qualification is that you have to be qualified for the job. Then DEI can be considered. It's simply a way of leveling a playing field that for the last 400 years has not been level. Now we have seen a constant attack on DEI. Like I said, we've seen universities. We saw LSU get rid of their DEI program. At least they said they changed the name, but they got rid of it. Emmett Smith in the University of Florida, Emmett posed a very interesting question, or put out a very interesting challenge. He opened his letter. He said he was utterly disgusted with the recent decision made to phase out diversity, equity, and inclusion, the DEI program at the University of Florida. He said he was upset with the elimination of DEI and leaves it to the provost to raise money for the university to continue to advance academic studies and programs. And one of the biggest things, though, I think about Emmett's challenge was that Emmett challenged African-American student athletes who are attending the University of Florida or who plan on attending the University of Florida to reconsider. I thought that was a huge and gutsy move by Emmitt Smith. And we saw Roland Martin do the same thing, but I think when it comes from Emmitt Smith, who arguably, along with Tim Tebow, are the best and most well-known athletes to ever come out of the University of Florida, some of the most well-known to ever come out of the SEC, and the leading rusher in NFL history, to come out and challenge his alma mater to say, you guys have done something wrong. You're not being inclusive. You're not being diverse. You're getting rid of this program, and I'm pissed off. And I think that African-American athletes should reconsider attending this university. And we all know that these athletes are the lifeblood of these SEC schools, of all the major programs, all the major universities. African-American in particular athletes are the lifeblood of these programs. So I want to get you guys feeling about this. Do you feel, first of all, how do you feel about the elimination of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs? And not only are they getting rid of the programs, they are firing staff. They're getting rid of the people who run the program. So they don't want any vestiges of this around the universities in a lot of cases. That's what the politics are of today. And it's not just Florida. Florida is on the map because of what Emmitt Smith said, but it's happening in Louisiana. It's happening in Mississippi. It's happening in the Carolinas. It's happening all over the country. And I want to get some feedback from you guys. How do you guys feel about it? It just makes me, it's interesting. It makes me, I'm upset about it because I think a lot of people will look at it and say, well, it doesn't affect me. And I feel like if you are looking at it and saying, well, it doesn't affect me, so I'm not going to worry about it, well, eventually it's going to affect you. And it's going to affect your brothers, your sisters, your mother, somewhere down the line. It's going to affect you. So this is not something that you can just push to the side and say, well, it doesn't affect me directly personally. It does. My man Brent says elections matter, and they do matter. And let's see, I'm trying to see. God saw beginning, and let's see. He just increased the amount of money certain players will receive because of you. Because for U of F, you're qualified to play in some capacity with that. Okay, I don't. You have to. I was trying to read that and decipher that, but I kind of get the gist of what you're saying. There are always going to be people who will be willing to accept a payout to do this. But I think Emmitt making this plea at this point, I think that speaks volumes, and I think that will speak to some people. There will be some people who will be of conscience who will definitely take a look. I encourage the athletes at LSU who are attending LSU or any of these schools to really think about it. If you couldn't run fast and jump high, would you be able to get into this school? Because what we've seen is, even with DEI, even with diversity, equity, and inclusion, in the African-American community, they seem to only want the best and the brightest. We don't have to meet the same standard in hell for their white counterparts. They want the best and the brightest. They want the people who can run fast, jump the highest, or who are at the top of the class. And that's not always true for the white counterparts of college students. The regular white kid and the regular black kid are not treated the same. So that's the basis for having DEI. And when you see these schools getting rid of DEI, that's a troubling sign. But the question we have to ask, is this an opportunity for HBCUs? Is this an opportunity for HBCUs to come? Emmett said something he said, go where you're wanted, don't go where you're not wanted. That is something, because I feel like this is an opportunity with everything going on with HBCUs, with the DEI. I feel like this is an opportunity for HBCUs to get in and talk to the best and the brightest in the African-American community, whether it be athletes or academic. I believe this is an opportunity. And if our HBCUs can take advantage of this, and it was ironic, a friend of mine, David Grubb, he pointed out to me, he said, A Different World. If you notice, A Different World, the cast of A Different World has been on tour. They have been at HBCUs. They were in Atlanta this week. They were on Good Morning America. And it reminded me of a time when I was in school. That's when I was in school, around that time. And that was the place to be. That was the thing to be. Everybody wanted to be involved with HBCUs. And we've seen a resurgence of HBCUs in the last, 2 or 3 years. But is this the next level? Is this the next level? Is this something that HBCUs can take and use for their benefit as a recruiting tool? Hey, we can come here. We're going to love you. We're going to take care of you. We're going to treat you right. Now, and that is going to be the question. HBCUs being prepared to take that influx of students and treat them right and give them the right treatment, give them the great customer service and things like that. Those are going to be the keys. Is this opportunity? I think it is. When you see the cast of A Different World, and they're still the cast of A Different World, when you looked at them, they still got love from this generation, from the generation of college students who are in college. When when they introduced them on stage, they were getting standing ovations and cheers. The people were loving them. People still knew who they were. And that's 30 years later. People still know the Kadeem Hardison as a character of Dwayne Wayne. They still know Jasmine Guy as Whitley Gilbert. That built a basis for HBCUs, and the wonder years for HBCUs. I wonder if we can run that back in a new era, and I wonder if the cancellation of DEI programs could be the catalyst for bringing in and but bringing a era back, or having a new era of HBCU resurgence. Because I don't necessarily, we bring it back, but having a resurgence of HBCUs in terms of people wanting to come there, it being the place to be, wanting to be involved in the HBCU community. I think this is an opportunity, and I think if our leaders in our HBCUs, us as alums, and our leaders as of HBCUs are on the ball, we can make this work for us as much as positive as we can do, as positive work as we can put in. We can make this work for HBCUs. I would love to see that. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that this is an opportunity for HBCUs to grow, to actually go out in our community, get the best and the brightest of us, and bring them back to HBCUs, whether it be athletes? And I know there's been a lot of talk over the last 2 or 3 years, 2 or 3, 4 years, about big time college athletes coming back to HBCUs. Now, I'm realistic. I'm a realist. I cover sports all the time. I know when the majority of big time college athletes are not about to flock back to HBCUs. I mean, we that's just the truth. There's too much money involved, NIL money, opportunities to go to the next level. But for HBCUs, my thing is let's create the best opportunities that we can create when some of those students do want to come back, whether it be on the football field, the basketball field, or in the research lab or in the engineering department. Let's create the best opportunities that we can create for those young people. Because if we create the best opportunities, then we're setting a great foundation for more people to come back, and we can build on that. We know that the system is not fair. If it was fair, we wouldn't need DEI programs. We wouldn't need diversity and equity programs. But if these Confederate schools, and that's what I call them, that's my nickname for them. I hope y'all don't get offended. But, like I said before, they have, if you look at most, particularly in the Deep South, a lot of these schools who are doing these things, in particular in the Southeastern Conference and the ACC, have direct connections to the Confederacy. So I call them Confederate schools. But if you really look at it, if those schools are going to do that, then we have to be prepared to go after those students and bring them into the fold at HBCUs. I think that's the way you grow HBCUs. That's the way you grow the brand. That's the way you grow the student body. That is the way that we can take advantage of this situation. Bring those young people in to places where they can be nurtured and loved and shown growth and all of those things. Because I think in my mind, I think a lot of times in our community, we don't have a hard time getting along with others in the community, in particular white. We have to know white people. We have to know how white people move, what they think, how they feel. Where we have the hardest time is we have a hard time getting along with ourselves, because we embrace, and so much negativity from the media and all of these outside forces are heaped onto us till we believe the negative things about each other in a much easier sense. And so a lot of times we don't get along with each other. It's not that we have a hard time getting along with white people. We have a hard time getting along with each other. And I know from my personal experience going to a HBCU, going to Southern, was one of the things that I knew, but I got a chance. When you see something, it really makes it real to you when you see it. I knew Black people, how diverse Black people were in thought, in action, and what, where we work and the things that we do and how we think. All of those things, I knew we were diverse, but to actually see it, and seeing people from California and New York and Florida and Chicago, and seeing us all be in one place and seeing the diversity of thought and all of those things, meeting people who were parents worked in the movie industry, or parents were executives at companies, to people whose parents were janitors, and all of us working and being in one place. It lets you know, it opened eyes that Black people accomplish and do all kinds of things. And it's not just one thing, that's why I used to have I still do, but I used to pet peeve of mine when I would see people say, well, Black people don't do that, in particular comedians, whatever, because it's reinforcing stereotypes. I knew Black people from the time I was 17 or 18 who skydived, skied, did all kinds of things that weren't necessarily associated with Black people in our community. But I knew people who did that, and I learned those and met those people while attending an HBCU. And I think a lot of people can tell that same story. I think that's the same story that you see in a show like A Different World. A Different World, a bunch of kids who were from different backgrounds, who some were rich, some were middle class, some were poor, but they were all together at the HBCU. And the commonality was that they were Black kids trying to get educated and trying to elevate themselves. And I think that is the important thing. And I think that's the same kind of atmosphere we can breed and grow in today's HBCUs. And if DEI is the catalyst for that, then I hate to see the DEI programs go, because it's taking away some opportunities from some people. But as HBCUs, we have to be there to pick up the slack. As HBCU alums, there are some things we have to do. We have to be able to pick up the slack and keep moving this thing forward. And so that's my take on it. I think this can be something good for HBCUs. What's necessarily seen as a negative from the larger universities, I think this can be a plus for HBCUs if, in fact, we are prepared as HBCU. Not, and every HBCU is different. I don't want to lump everybody in together, but I think in general, as HBCUs, if we are prepared to take advantage of some of this, because you're going to see a fall off in enrollment in your big state universities of African-American students. You're going to see a fall off. I promise. Every time these kinds of things have happened, you've seen a fall off in African-American and women, African-American and women. You've seen a fall off in enrollment of generally that group of people, those groups of people. So as HBCUs, I would like to see our HBCUs be in position to take advantage of that and welcome them into the fold. I would love that. And I want to get you guys feedback. We're getting some feedback in particular about athletics, because like I said, with the NIL money being involved, with the transfer rules and the transfer portal and all of that being involved, then that changes the game, because there's always going to be some people who are going to go for the money. And I get it. I get it. People, a lot of guys are going to play big time college ball because the big time college ball is paying big time money. That's a no brainer. Hey, you go do what you got to do. But at the same time, for those students who are average students, who are a little above average students, who aren't in the top 1%, but maybe you're in the top 5%. And now they're only taking the top 1%. So why can't we get to top 2%, top 3%, top 4 or 5, top 10%? Let's get them over to our HBCUs. Let's make that happen. I think this is a prime opportunity that can be taken advantage of if our HBCUs are prepared. Now, we know whenever we see movements like this, what happens next, or what's already happening. There are going to be budget cuts. There in the state of Louisiana. I give you a state where I'm in. I give you an example. The governor of Louisiana, aside from passing all of these new criminal laws where you can open carry guns with no training and you only have to be 18 years old, he's also proposed in his budget a $100 million cut to higher education. Now, we all know that's going to affect higher education across the board, but we know who's going to get the brunt of those cuts. Who is it going to affect the most? And that's going to be our HBCUs, our state-run HBCUs, Grambling and Southern. When you see $100 million, and why? It's not like they don't have the money. They're not cutting because of budget. They're cutting just because they don't want to see the growth. And I said this on the last show, and I'm going to reiterate it again. This is the time when if you're in a state like Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, North and South Carolina, states in the Deep South, this is the time where you need to be ringing and knocking on the doors of your legislative Black caucus and coming up with a plan and sitting down with them to say, look, this federal government, the Biden administration, has put out a list of schools of land-grant universities that have been underfunded by billions, by millions, hundreds of millions, and sometimes billions of dollars by the state. Money that was given to them by the federal government that was supposed to go to land-grant universities that the states have withheld or not giving to or not divided equitably. How can we go back and make that right? We have to hold the states accountable. And the first step in doing that is going to your legislative Black caucuses in each state and demanding that they take this up as a cause. Demanding that the funding for these land grant universities be taken up as a cause, and figuring out whether it be going to court, whatever it is, but finding out how we can make this right, because this plays hand in hand with the diversity, equity, and inclusion and the growth of our universities. Point blank, whether it's about athletics, because what they did is what they've done over the years, they built up their athletic programs with state money and then passed laws that you couldn't use state money to build athletic facilities or build dormitories and things like that. So they stunted they built up the universities that they wanted to build up, mainly the big state universities, and then stunted the growth of the smaller universities, in particular HBCUs, and it put them on long-term plans. They say, oh yeah, we'll build you a facility under a consent decree in the state of Louisiana, but it took them 25 years to build the building. Took them 25 years to build a building. I.e. the Gremlins basketball stadium, for example. Gremlins basketball stadium, which I think now is maybe 8 to 10 years old. It's a pretty new facility, and the Fred Hobby Center. But that building was supposed to have been built 20 years ago, and it took them that long. But that's part of the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece. But we have to start out with our legislative Black caucus and getting them on board to make demands. Southern is a land grant university. I think Southern was number 3 on the list, being underfunded by over $1 billion. The state of Louisiana owes Southern over $1 billion. I think Florida owes FAMU over $2 billion. I know that's just numbers that are coming up with. I don't know the list in order, but I think Southern was number 3. I know Prairie View was in there, but there were several land grant universities in there. We need to be demanding that money be brought forth. In the state of Louisiana, we shouldn't be accepting $100 million budget cut to higher education. And across the country, you're seeing that at all, in the former Confederate states, in the Confederate conferences, the SEC, the ACC, you're seeing that. Troy says we need to educate our people at an early age holistically. You're right. It's across the Confederate South. For example, 102K in the stadium, 5K look like you, 80,000 hardcore Trump supporters. Yeah. Less than 5 ADs look like you, less than 3 coaches. You're exactly right. All of that is a part of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that this is the time, while they are out there and they're on the offensive, it's time for us to go and not be on the defensive. And as HBCU alums and HBCU leaders, we need to go on the offensive. Number one, going after our students, letting them know that our schools are a safe place and you can get educated at our schools and it can prepare you to go out into the world. We know that, but a lot of young people are sold that anything that is predominantly Black or all Black is not quote unquote the real world, or it's something less than. And a lot of young people believe that. And we have to be about the business of not necessarily correcting it, but just doing the work, show and proving. We are showing and proving, because a lot of the young people who believe that they're not being taught to. They're not being taught anything different. So that's why they value in going to the University of Alabama. Or even though their parents and their grandparents who created the lifestyle for them to be in this integrated world, and a lot of times predominantly white world, a lot of the lifestyle was created because of their attendance at HBCUs, but their family's attendance. But then they look at it and think that they're getting something less than if they continue to attend the HBCUs. And that's something that's pervasive throughout our community. It really is. And that is something that we have to get past, to understand, because something is predominantly Black, doesn't necessarily mean that it's not quality, and it doesn't mean that it's not a good thing, and that it can't take you to the next level, because we've seen it. We see it work for us all the time. We have to get on this. And like I said, first step is going to our legislative Black caucus in our respective states, I see Ken Richard says Tennessee State is owed $500 million from the state. We have to hold our legislative Black caucus to the fire, because they are the people who are in the legislature, who are making the rules and who are helping formulate. And if they're going to be there, a lot of times things don't get passed without the numbers in the legislative Black caucus. We have to hold their feet to the fire and make them demand that this money come about. And if not, then in the state of Louisiana, it's 32% Black. And that goes back to voting. Let's be real. It goes back to voting. But if we are motivated to go to the polls, we can change things. And that's across the country. Mississippi, the blackest place in America. South Carolina, places like that. Those are places where we need to be, as African Americans, as HBCU alums, standing 10 toes deep, as they say, standing on business and demanding that these things be made right in terms of funding to our HBCUs. And then as HBCUs, we have to be proactive in getting into our school systems, getting into our elementary schools, junior highs, and middle schools and high schools, and getting those students on campus. If they aren't going to be accepted there, even if they are going to be accepted, make sure our HBCUs are right there in the fight for our best and brightest, and not just the best and brightest, but the kids who are most affected by the DEI are going to be the ones who are in the middle, those above average to average students who are not going to be able to have the money to go to the PWI that was offering them acceptance and maybe offering them scholarship money. We're going to have to take up the slack and create a place for our students, for our best and bright in the African American community, and have a place for them to come where they are welcome, where they can flourish. And I think that can be done at HBCUs if we put our complete effort into it. What do you guys think? Let's see. So it says, let's be honest, a certain two-term president began a substantial reduction in cuts prior to Bush and questioned our relevancy. You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You can call the name if you want to, but I get what you're saying. But yeah, I think these are discussions that we have to have. And we started out this discussion talking about DEI being removed from a lot of the big state universities across the country. We saw this in California some years ago. So this isn't just I've talked a lot about the South, but California did this. They got rid of affirmative action and DEI years ago, and they saw a precipitous drop in African American enrollment in their colleges and universities. And I think we're about to see the same thing. And we all know that it's done on purpose, but we have the opportunity. Yeah, that's California. We're here, a lot of us who follow this, who are on HBCU sports, who listen to the Big Time Sports Show, who watch the Big Time Sports Show. We're in the South, or from the South. There are places that we can go. There are the South Carolina states, the North Carolina A&Ts, the Southern universities, the Florida A&Ms, the Alcorns, that are available. So let's make those places the best that they can be, so those young people have a welcoming spot to come to. That's my stance on the DEI. Now, getting rid of DEI, I think it's a terrible thing. Anytime you're taking away opportunity for improvement, it's a bad thing. But I think we know the people that we're dealing with. We know the type of people that we're dealing with. We know we're dealing with people who ban classic books, and they basically want to take anything that does not look like them, that is not based on what they think, out of the school system. They want to ban the books. They want to take any kind of diversity out. They don't want anything that's going to make them think about the history of this country in schools. And they don't want to provide opportunities for their young people to be involved with our young people where they don't have total control over it. because the last thing they want is the actual diversity. So we have to be there. We have to be there. Like I said, I was talking about DEI, but it really came home to me how as HBCUs we can really move into a spot that we were once in when I saw the reunion of A Different World and I saw the reaction of those young people. And I was thinking, man, that was a generational thing. I mean, that was a great thing. Just and you know, I know it was a television show, but think about if you are of a certain age during a certain time, how you were affected by A Different World. How many people who looked at A Different World and said, "Oh, I want to go to a school like Hillman." There were a lot of people who picked HBCUs because of A Different World, and in seeing that reaction to them when they were introduced and doing the reunion, and they're on tour now. From what I understand, they're touring HBCUs. That just made me realize that this is an opportunity for HBCUs to really, really reach out back into the African American community and get our best and brightest and bring them back and give them something that a lot of us enjoyed in terms of HBCU commitment to excellence and the HBCU feeling and the pride that goes along in our community. So that's what I was thinking, that maybe this is an opportunity. What do you guys think about that? Do you think it's opportunity? Do you think our HBCUs can be ready and can grow into this? That's what I'm wondering, because I think they can, and I think they should be ready. You know, I think this is a definite opportunity, but I also think I talked about Emmett Smith earlier in the show. Emmett issuing the challenge to athletes who are planning on attending or who are currently attending the University of Florida and schools who are doing away with their DEI programs. And he stressed to them to reconsider and really take a hard look at that. Do you guys think that the people will follow through with that? I think that is an interesting challenge. I think that is a great challenge, and I'd like to do the same thing to see a lot of these athletes. I want to see more of these professional athletes and more of these high, well-known former athletes speak out. And I know a lot of them won't agree, because that's class comes into play in this too. A lot of people are not, a lot of guys, I'm not messing up my paycheck. I'm not messing up my place in society by speaking out. So you're not going to get everybody, but I would like to see this question posed to some of these big time athletes and former athletes about this. Because a lot of them, they don't necessarily deal with diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion, because they're athletes. But if I promise you, if some of these students, some of these great athletes decided, hey, wait a minute, let me take a look at this. Maybe this isn't the best place for me. Maybe this isn't the most welcoming place for me to go play football at. Maybe the University of Florida is not the best place for me to play football or play basketball. Maybe LSU is not the best place for me to play football or basketball, or the University of Alabama. I guarantee you, if it starts to affect the bottom line, if it starts to affect winning some SEC championships and some national championships, I guarantee you that there will be some reversal on the removal of DEI programs. If you live in the South, you know that football is God family football, and sometimes not in that order. So if some of the 4 or 5-star athletes start to decommit, like my man Ken said, and indicate that it's due to DEI, I guarantee you there will be some lawmakers who will pay attention to that. I promise you, there will be some lawmakers who will pay attention to that. There is no doubt in my mind that, because there's one thing they love more than money and keeping it to themselves or keeping us out, and that's they don't want to lose any football games. They don't want to lose it. They don't mind losing a few things, but football is not one of the things that they want to lose at. And y'all know that just like I know that. They don't like losing football games. And if it comes to losing football games, I guarantee you there'll be some revisiting of DEI of getting rid of the DEI programs. I promise you there'll be some revisiting of that if there is in fact some people who decided or people who indicated that they weren't going to be attending these big universities because of DEI or the lack of DEI, the lack of diversity, the lack of inclusion. If there were people, if I guarantee you, if they made that a priority, you would definitely see some change. I promise you, I know that for a fact. So I would like to see us, I would like to see that be something where guys who attend these universities or have attended come out and be outspoken about it. I think this is a way to make change. Now, if they aren't about that change, I mean, I get it. I don't get it, but I get it. But I would like to see that kind of change. I like to see that outspokenness. I'm glad to see it from, I think a guy like Emmitt Smith saying it carries a ton of weight. I think it carries a ton of weight and it brings it into the national conversation. And I'm glad to see it there. What I want you guys to do, I want to say shouts out to everybody who's joining us on Facebook, everybody who's joining us on YouTube. What I want my Facebook people to do is go over to YouTube, like and subscribe to the YouTube page. Make sure you get views on YouTube too, because we want to build that platform up, okay? We want to build it up to something that's a major platform. So when we have these discussions, they can go all over. Share it with your friends, share it with as many people as you can. We need you to do that. The Big Tyme Sports Show on HBCU Sports. We appreciate you joining us. But yeah, we want to have these kinds of conversations, not just sports conversations, but we want to have sports conversations and the politics and the social issues. We want it to be something that, we want to be have those things and talk about those things and have them intersect. We want to have those things intersect because they do intersect. DEI and, college athletes and professional athletes speaking out about diversity, equity, and inclusion in these universities who are getting rid of it. That's intersectional. Those are things that can work together. We can make those things happen. Marcus says all players should speak out against it, not just football players. This isn't a black or white issue. It's a humanity issue. Yeah, Marcus, in theory, that's right. But and I agree with you in theory, but in real life, it is a black or white issue. Like in real life, people see it that's how people see it. And it is a black or white issue. And it's been the black or white part of it has been made, the black people have been made the boogeyman in this. You don't hear, when they talk about diversity and equity and inclusion, you don't hear them talk about white women, even though white women are the biggest beneficiaries of it. It's a black face on it. It's a black face. So yeah, we want to talk about it like that. But that's not the reality of it. The reality of it, that there's a black face on it, and it is a black issue. And it is a human issue. I agree with you. It's a human issue, but the reality of it, black and white matters in the country that we live in and in these days and times, and it always has. And as black people, this is my personal opinion, and since it's my show, I'll give you my personal opinion. We have to stop it being so inclusive when it comes to issues of progress, because no other group includes us in it until they are in a position where they need help. We're the only ones who try to be inclusive. And this was a conversation I had about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The only people who really cared about diversity, equity, and inclusion were usually black people. But we always tried to have a big umbrella, and we try to bring everybody in under our umbrella, under people of color or women, when in actuality, those groups don't always include us, whether it be women's issues and black women. Black women aren't always included in the greater issues among women. When it becomes people of color, they don't always include black people. As a matter of fact, a lot of times the same people who we include in our umbrella run away from us in times of need. So this is a black and white issue, and it is a humanity issue. I agree with you on that, but it is a black and white issue, because what happens is the blackface becomes the boogeyman of things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. They become, that's what's put up when you hear people talk about, well, black, or they got the job because they're black, not because they're qualified. When the foundation of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the foundation of affirmative action is providing opportunities for qualified people. That's like the first rule, the first step. So, I get what you're saying, and I honor that, but, I have to give a little pushback on this, not black and white, because it is a black and white issue, in my opinion. So, in the big picture. So that's just where I am with it. But yeah, I want us to think about and contemplate. And this is an issue that I want to revisit, because I think that this is something that from a long-term goal that we have to formulate real plans. And if we, not just on the athletic field, but in universities, period. And for so long, we've been in survival mode. We have to come out of survival mode and really go on the offensive. That's my opinion. And I'm going to reach out to some people in higher education, see if I can get them on and talk about these kind of issues, because I feel like we should be on the offensive. We should have been in our communities. I think a lot of times with universities, we have gone and closed, not necessarily closed the doors, but we closed ourselves off from the communities, surrounding communities. I think we need to get back in those communities and start welcoming them back onto our campuses and being a part of our university. And I think that's how we grow our universities. And well, I don't know what you guys think, but that's what I think about it. So, we're going to continue to have these conversations. We're going to continue to grow. I appreciate you guys, participation and feedback. I want to do this more where we get the feedback and we actually have a conversation about these things, because I think these are important issues to talk about. Another issue that I want to talk about right quick before we end this is, now this is a sports issue, but it also kind of ties to diversity. But Jackson State's women's basketball team, which has been a dominant team over the last 3 or 4 years, they missed the NCAA tournament last year they got knocked out in the semifinals, but they didn't get a bid to any postseason. This year, once again, that people are saying if Jackson State wins the SWAC, should they have to play in the play-in? Should they be higher than a 16th seed? They're 17-0. I think they're 17, 18-0, trying to go for 18-0 in the conference. They won games. Now they're out of conference record. They're only 2-7 out of conference, and they don't have any quad 1 or quad 2 or quad 3 wins, which is what they do, is how it's broken down. If you beat a high major, that's a quad 1 win. I think it's the top 50, something like that. It's a quad 1. The next level is quad 2 and on down. They don't have any of those but they do have an undefeated record in the conference. They've been dominant in the conference, and some people think that they shouldn't be in the play-in game, or they should be out or higher than a 16th seed. I'm kind of I don't think they should be in the play-in for sure. A high or 16th or 15th seed, I could make a leg to stand on for them if they had a better out-of-conference record. If they had beaten some mid-majors, things like that, I think that would stand better for them. I just want for our conferences, and for the SWAC in particular, I want to see the best teams go. And that's been one of the issues, and it's always going to be an issue when you have conference tournaments determining who goes to the NCAA tournament, because a team can get hot. They can hit a big shot, in a close game, like we saw, with Southern and Jackson State last year. Southern hits a running 3 to win the game and knock Jackson State out. I mean, we've seen some teams get hot and go on a roll and end up being in the NCAA tournament with a losing record. And that's what happens when the conference tournament, and that's a part of it. That's a part of March Madness. But I'm hoping that the best teams are available for the NCAA tournament. And I think Jackson State they've proven it over the course of the season that they are the best team in women's basketball in the Southwestern Conference, and probably the best team in women's basketball in all of HBCU land where they are. And so I want to see them. I want to see them get to the tournament first, and then we'll deal with where they should be seeded. They probably, if they get to the tournament, I would think they probably will be seeded as a 15 or 16, in particular in women's basketball, because there's a big gulf in women's basketball between the haves and the have-nots. It's not such a big gulf in men's basketball. I think that's why you've seen a lot of the SWAC and MEAC schools go in and beat Power 5 programs and beat mid-majors, because it's not as big of a gulf between the have and the have-nots in men's basketball as it is in women's basketball. So I want to see Jackson State. I want to see them win the tournament. I want to see them get the opportunity. I remember 2 years ago when they did win the tournament and they got a chance to go and play LSU, and they were up by 10 against LSU with like 5 minutes left in the game. And LSU had to fight back to get into to win that game. And that was a great Jackson State team. I would like to see them get that opportunity to go and pull an upset somewhere. I really would. And I hope that happens. I hope that happens for multiple HBCU teams, men's and women's side. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I want to see our best teams participate in the NCAA tournament. So hopefully they can hold it together and get there and get to the tournament. So that's my take on that. But I tell you what I want to do, I want to thank you guys for joining me. We're going to try to do this again later on in the week. I know today is Wednesday, but we're going to do this again later on in the week. I want to thank you guys for joining me. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun, and it's going to be fun again. And we're going to have these conversations. We're going to talk sports. We're going to talk politics. We're going to talk social issues, because that's what we do. And also, tune in to keep abreast of HBCU sports. Go in and like the HBCU sports page on Facebook. Go in and like and subscribe to the YouTube page. Watch this. Share it with friends. Get as many views as we can. Share it with friends. Watch it over again and do all of those things. Go to the YouTube page and like and share and subscribe to the YouTube page. Please do that. And, we appreciate that if you do that. So I appreciate y'all joining me. It's been a lot of fun. And remember, big players make big plays in big games. That's what makes us big time. This is the Big Time Sports Show. And y'all know Flood.